This is Arno Bohm. This photo was taken on Christmas Day, 1914, in the no man's land, between the German and British trenches, facing each other in a section of the Belgian front called Ploegsteert. The men on either side of him are members of the London Rifle Brigade. Bohm is a German soldier. They are participating in the largest act of mass fraternization between two armies at war in history, the Christmas Truce of 1914. It was opposed by the military high commands on either side, but initiated by the soldiers and field officers in the trenches, which stretched from the Belgian coast across northern France all the way to the Swiss border. I never thought we would spend Christmas the way we did, wrote Corporal Robert Renton of the Seaforth Highlanders. On Christmas Eve, the Germans in front of us started singing what appeared to be hymns. We were shouting for encores. Their trenches are only about 150 yards in front of us, and they kept the singing up all night. On Christmas Day, some of them started to shout across to us to come over for a drink. In this photo, German soldiers decorate a small Christmas tree that had been delivered to the troops. These lighted trees became symbols of the truce, often placed on the parapets to announce the desire for a ceasefire. It was a beautiful moonlit night, frost on the ground, white almost everywhere, Albert Morin of the 2nd Queen's Regiment wrote of Christmas Eve 1914. There was a lot of commotion in the German trenches, and then there were those lights. And then they sang Silent Night, Stille Nacht. I shall never forget it. It was one of the highlights of my life. Everywhere along the lines, music preceded the initial contact. Walter Kirchhoff, a tenor with the Berlin Opera, serenaded the lines of the 120th and 124th Württemberg regiments. He was met with a standing ovation from the French troops opposite. It started with one or two going over halfway and meeting the Germans between the two lines of trenches, Corporal Renton continued. Then it got that there was a big crowd of German and British, all standing together, shaking hands and wishing each other a Merry Christmas. They were giving us cigars and cheroots to exchange for cigarettes, and some of them had bottles of whiskey. A more solemn Christmas morning was spent in areas where recent battles had left dead comrades on the field. The grim task of burying friends and fellow soldiers was how many in these sectors began the truce. In many cases, they decided to cease firing for a day or more following this. Corporal Renton recounts, "There were 2 dead Frenchmen between our lines. We could never get out to bury them until that day. The Germans helped us to dig the grave. One of their officers held a service over the graves. It was a sight worth seeing and one not easily forgotten. Both Germans and British paying respect to the French dead." The photo we began this video with was from the Ploegsteert section of the trenches in Belgium. 1 week before that photo was taken, the men in that photo were engaged in an intense and bloody battle. The British High Command had ordered an assault on the German lines in that sector on December 18th. The official history of the Royal Warwickshire Regiment recounts the events of that day as follows. The 4:30 a.m. attack was preceded by a quarter of an hour's artillery bombardment. But the bombardment had inflicted little damage on the German wire and had not prevented the Germans from manning their parapet in force and opening a heavy fire. Major Brewis was killed within a few yards of the German wire, and several other officers were shot down close to him or in trying to work their way through the wire. The bulk of the attackers were either shot down on their way across no man's land or brought to a standstill outside the wire. That regiment alone lost some 300 soldiers that day, killed and wounded. The men in these photographs had participated in some of the bloodiest battles in recorded history of war in the 4 months preceding Christmas 1914. In August alone, the French army had seen casualties above 250,000 before the armies settled into the brutal war of attrition that would mark the Western Front. But for 1 or 2 days in 1914, tens of thousands of soldiers put down their arms and became human again. For many, it was a profound and unforgettable moment. The truce made headlines in England and elsewhere. Many still harbored the hope that the war would conclude soon. Although the states engaged were busy expanding the military mobilizations in their countries to prepare for a long struggle. Nearly 4 more Christmases would pass before the war would end. The high command on both sides ensured that the truce of 1914 would never be repeated in the years that followed.